Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's Spirited Awards Roundtable discussion presented by Perrier. My name is Erin Rose. I'm the bar director for the Takami Group in Bogota, Colombia. It is my pleasure to be moderating this panel on drinks culture today for Tales of the Cocktail. In the past 2 years, we've all seen huge changes in our industry, and one such change for Tales has been the move towards presenting and celebrating the work of our peers around the world in digital as well as presential formats. Today we'll be chatting with folks from various countries about drinks culture. Obviously, this could include many aspects of our industry, but this year we've narrowed it down to the implementation of 3 concepts in bars around the world: working with local ingredients and producers, sustainability and reducing waste in bar programs, and using low and no ABV spirits and cocktails in cocktail programs, and how these concepts intersect with changes brought on by the pandemic. I am very excited to chat and learn from our 7 panelists today, many of whose work I have followed throughout the years, and in some cases have had the pleasure of visiting their bars or pop-ups. And while I miss the frozen Irish coffees and seeing all your faces, I think one really lovely aspect of digital seminars is that we're able to chat with people from all over the world. Today we'll be chatting about local ingredients, low ABV and no ABV, and sustainability initiatives with people from Brazil to Oslo, from Australia to South Africa to San Francisco, and from Texas to New York, which can sometimes feel like 2 different continents. I'm gonna let our panelists introduce themselves and tell us about their work. Let's start with Claire from Hunky Dory in Brooklyn.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. And it's truly an honor as well to be on a panel with so many people I respect. It's funny, I'm actually from Texas and now I live in New York. But so they are very far apart, but also very near and dear to me, both. I own a bar and restaurant called Hunky Dory in Brooklyn. It's an all-day space, and I'm also opening a little wine bar with another panelist here, Nick Torres, in San Francisco. And then in between that and surrounding all of those things, I do a lot of work in the sustainability sector of our industry, and whether that's researching or educating, it's just something that I try to lift up in my work and other people's work.
Awesome, super happy to have you here. Next, I'm gonna let Maroš from Himkok in Oslo, Norway, tell us a bit about his work.
Hello, everybody. It was an honor and pleasure to be there with all the legends around the world. My name is Maroš. I'm from Himkok, Norway, Oslo. The bar situated in a very old building. We are focused for Norwegian culture and Norwegian produce, I always say. And yeah, I'm working 6 years here for the Himkok. That's it, what I can say.
Thank you, nice to have you here. Next, let's head down to Cape Town, South Africa, and talk to Kurt from Cause Effect.
Hey guys, thank you. It's a pleasure being on the panel this evening or today, depending where you're from. And it's absolute honor to be around all you guys as well, listening to what you have to say. And I'm sure I'm going to learn just as much as everybody else watching this. Yeah, I'm from Cause and Effect at the tip of Southern Africa. And Cause Effect is a cocktail kitchen inspired by Cape Town's bounty and the bounty of Africa, which is ocean, mountain, vineyards, and fynbos. We're around for 5 years. And yeah, we're absolutely loving what we're doing. Thank you.
Awesome. Happy to have you here. Next, our next panelist couldn't make it, but he sent me some notes. It's Márcio Silva from Locali Café in Sao Paulo, Brazil. Many of you may know Márcio's work con Guillotina in Sao Paulo. And he's also worked with the Brazilian reality TV show Bar Abierto. He's a well-known Brazilian bartender currently on tour in Europe, and did some really lovely work with low ABV and wine-based cocktails at Locale. that we're going to talk about later in the panel. Next, I'd like to go ahead and ask Chris from Sands Bar in Austin, Texas, to tell us a little bit about his work.
Hi, my name is Chris Marshall. I'm here in Austin, Texas. My pronouns are he and him. Started Sands Bar in 2017 as a zero-proof option for people who wanted to enjoy nightlife without alcohol. We've enjoyed our wonderful brick and mortar space here in East Austin, serving great drinks to everyone. We also do a tour called the Sands Bar National Tour. We visit 10 cities across the country, serving non-alcoholic drinks.
Awesome. Really excited to have you here. Thank you, Chris. Next, we're going to head up to San Francisco and talk with Nicolas Torres from True Laurel. Nick, could you tell us a little bit about your work?
Hey, Erin. Yeah,
Hey.
I'm Nicolas here, he, him. I'm the beverage director partner at True Laurel here in San Francisco. And as Claire said, also opening up a wine bar sooner than later, hopefully. I'm actually at True Laurel right now, so there are a few things going around. So moving around, so there might be some extra noises that happen. But we are a local produce seasonal cocktail bar that puts as much energy into its food that we do our drinks as well.
Awesome. Thanks. Thanks for being here, Nick. And finally, we're going to head down to Sydney, Australia to talk with Matt from Rebar. Matt, could you tell us a little bit?
Hey everyone, I'm Matt from Re, and formerly Scout has recently closed in London. Re is all about using recycled materials and food waste, and Scout was all about local produce and locality. So yeah, I'm here to talk about food waste.
Awesome. Can't wait to hear about it. All right. And that's actually a nice segue, because we are going to start off talking, well, not about food waste to start, but about local ingredients. I thought maybe we could start with Maroš talking to us a little bit about your work with local ingredients in Oslo.
Yeah, basically, local ingredients for us is very important because the Himco concept is built on the local ingredients and local produce. Basically, we introduce the ingredients through the cocktails in our customers. What is built a very interesting relationship with the guest, because you introduce something what is familiar with, or they know what is that, but it didn't have experience with. And this will bring another one experience for our guests. And you can imagine if you try something in your life, what you're familiar from the childhood, but you have in the cocktail in different way, then it is completely different relationship with not just the bar and cocktails, but with full experience. Yeah, we produce on the new menu. We collaborate with a couple of the producer, from the ice cream producer to a local wine producer from fruit wine. We have also collaborating with the small farms where they have small cheese produce, and they have waste, what is the whey or the water from the produce of the cheese. And we're using this one in the cocktail as well, what is small things around us, what we have time during the Corona lockdown to explore more deeply and reconnect more with the community in the Norway.
That's awesome. How has the focus on Norwegian ingredients changed your cocktail program or at Himcock? Or I think many of us trained in certain types of cocktails and then maybe now are trying to do other types of cocktails. So how has working with these ingredients changed the way that you create your cocktails and think about cocktails?
To be honest, for me, it was very interesting because I'm originally from Slovakia and came to Norway, and present to Norwegian people, their culture through the cocktails, for me was a long way as well to educate myself about what they have in Norway. I was lucky enough, we have very similar sources in Slovakia and Norway. And of course, we don't have sea. And was another one, the new ingredients for me, how to work with seaweed example. We have some farm in Norway where is produced truffle seaweed, what is smell like truffle and taste like seaweed, was bring beautiful minerality in the cocktails or spirit, because we are also the distillery, not just the bar, and we're using the local produce also in our spirits. For me, it was very nice to see how the people proud of the ingredients what they have in the country, no necessarily looking for the ingredients outside from the Scandinavia, but they was appreciated for the tradition and also the traditional produce from their countries.
That's
And,
awesome.
and to be honest, the project of Himkok was built around the Scandinavian culture and produce. Then they didn't have that big effect on our program. Basically, it was very interesting to just see this introduction to the cocktails and the people.
Definitely. Do you have, before we start talking with Kurt about local produce in a very different part of the world, what would be one tip you would have for bartenders that are starting to work with ingredients that may be unfamiliar to them or that are local that maybe there aren't a lot of recipes available?
I think so is start looking around yourself, like around you, start looking about not just old books, but also inspired by customers, because inspiration for me was Norwegian customers to introduce their flavor to me through their experience from childhood. And I can go deeply and explore these ingredients myself, taste, and then you start creativity to combine this flavor with something familiar from this bartender's books, example, or old classic cocktails.
Wow, that's great advice. Thank you very much. Now we're gonna head to a very different environment, but also a similar focus on local ingredients. Kurt, can you talk to us a bit about your work with South African botanicals and distillates?
Sure. Yeah, we're very fortunate in Cape Town to live in basically a floral kingdom. It's one of the 6 floral kingdoms in the world. We have 9,000 species of plants. 2/3 of it is endemic to this floral kingdom, and so there's a lot of plants to deal with, and not as easy access. But we have like local varieties, Artemisia, which we use, and then we also even get botanicals from Ghana, for example, like the hibiscus. It's like ridiculously cheap and amazing quality. And I think that what we've been doing with the botanicals, we've been studying the different plants and some of the effects they have as well. You're looking at the health benefits on some of them. Obviously, we're mixing them with a lot of spirits as well, but some of them even have slight psychoactive ingredients in them which are legal. I think I think it's probably easier in South Africa to mix with these plants because I think there's less laws, but obviously we go on a lot of folklore as well, where we have like very famously rooibos tea, for example, and there's another like 10 teas you can get that people have used in the past. So I think we got to a point where we identified all these products, and like Maroš said, is people can identify it locally as well. But what we've been learning is how to extract them, get the terpenes out of them. Is it steamed? Is it oil, or is it? And then putting these into different types of distillate, be it grape, mead, peach, apple, and so forth.
Very cool. And you guys are actually distilling in your bar program, is that right?
Yeah, well, we have different partners that distill for us, and some partners make we have some partners that make absinthe for us, and we have with the foraging, we have our rotovap that we use, and we've explored all kinds of things from CBD to the terpenes in those things as well. So yes, we've got a lot of different distillates that we're using from in the bar, but we collaborate with most people outside of our venue for that.
Okay.
Because we're 150 seaters, so it's quite a lot of bulk that you need for this environment.
Definitely. A few liter rotovap might not cut it. What advice would you give to bartenders who want to learn more about their local ecosystems and ingredients?
Well, yes, like I think Maroš said it as well, the nature around you have to first start taking a look at it and start noticing that it's everywhere. Talking to a local culinary and plant expert is very important as well. Do a course with them, walk in the wild with some botanists. Get obsessed with mushrooms. We found that like the rabbit hole of mushrooms is so deep, it's unbelievable. And once you get into that, talk to your gran, for example. She knows a lot about all these old plants and remedies that exist that you've never heard of. And going to old bookstores and buy old cookbooks that is written by someone in the last century that used to cook with some ingredients you've never heard of, but it actually grows in your garden. So it's all around you for sure.
That's great advice. Thank you very much. Matt, I'd actually gonna mix it up and ask you next. Could you talk to us a little bit about your work with Scout in London and your work with local ingredients?
Yeah, Scout started out as a bar that just from doing research of like where your produce comes from. I don't know if you've ever been to a supermarket in the UK, but produce all comes pre-packaged, pre-cut. It doesn't taste of anything. And it's probably flown from the other side of the world. And we know that at some point food's going to run out in the world because we're outgrowing food production without the population growing. So it was like, what would happen in the UK if the planes ran out of food and there was no food in the UK? And it's actually a problem at the moment with food on the shelves because of Brexit and struggling to get food into the UK. And it was like, what produce is grown in the UK that's not a potato or a parsnip or an apple? And there's incredible berries. So we started to look at all kinds of produce like this. And then as we started to grow into the bar, it was like, we're buying produce from North Scotland, but actually Northern France is closer to London. So but we still want to use everything from the British Isles. So we started to actually make our radius smaller. And that radius started to then just become London. And then we employed a forager who worked with us, and he would go out foraging for things in and around London. He would bring things back. We were foraging ourselves. There's a program within the streets of London where they plant trees and all kinds of things, and you can actually forage on pretty much most streets in London. There's plums, there's cherries, there's all kinds of things, and we built this huge map of where we could pick our own fruits and vegetables that are free, they're delicious, and yeah, that's where Scout came about.
Very cool. If someone, because sometimes there are concerns around foraging, especially in urban environments due to chemicals, pesticides. What tips would you give to bartenders looking to start foraging in a safe and effective way?
I would say definitely pick stuff that's higher up. Things that generally grow low, there's a lot of dogs and all kinds of things like that. So you don't want any contamination from the local dog. But yeah, pick things high. Don't go into other people's gardens. People get quite aggressive and upset, but ultimately go and knock on people's doors. A lot of people don't realize what's growing in their garden because they might be a part of a council building, like big council blocks or just big apartment blocks. And if you go and knock on people's door and ask them, like, can I pick your fruit? You'll be surprised that they actually don't even realize there's fruit growing in their garden. And then take it back, give them something to try, make something with it, give them a bottle of something, and they'll be really appreciative, and they'll actually let you come into their garden and get involved on a frequent basis.
Thank you very much. Good tips. Now we're gonna journey over to Northern California to Nick at True Laurel, who is also working with local ingredients in the Mecca that is Northern California. Nick, can you tell us a bit about the local ingredients that you work with at True Laurel?
Yeah, I mean, I think actually, like, speaking of that Mecca, the California bounty is, it's becoming sort of the new classic of California cuisine, the new approach, or not a new approach, but it's pretty standard these days. And when we opened almost 4 years ago, in the program we were doing before at Lazy Bear, we really want to have that local culinary approach. A lot of the bars I had been working in and been gone to, like, we're really celebrating like menu launches, so like seasonal menus that would last a quarter or so. But I kind of found that a lot of this like seasonality was using the term more on like clothing seasonality, like what to wear when it's cold, and citrusy, refreshing drinks in the summer, spicy, warm drinks in the fall, which, these have like their applications, of course, but they weren't really addressing what was actually growing at the time. And to look at it even closer, you know, California is known to sort of have this bounty, and we do celebrate it here at True Laurel. But the reason we have this bounty is because we have put a lot of time, energy, and wasted energy into growing things in certain places of this state that didn't even have water. So, I mean, a lot of our bounty that we speak of grows in the Southern Central Valley, and it takes tons of energy to keep up this production and image of California. So I think we started looking at it just like even a little bit closer and like really like honing in on our market gardeners. So when you go to the farmer's market, like know who you're dealing with, know that you're dealing with a market farmer, because market farmers produce on a much smaller scale. They typically have a little more control over their product. They don't have to use as much pesticides because of that, because they're not doing these big ag operations. They're a lot closer to their produce, which makes better produce and gives a better story.
That is such a good transition into one of the questions that I want to ask Claire, that I want to come back and ask you about preservation techniques a little further on. But first, I'd like to ask Claire about the role that local ingredients play in creating more sustainable bar programs.
I don't know if I can say anything more to that hasn't already been said, but I mean, I got my cocktail, my bartending career started in restaurants, and I feel like that's where I've always thrived in doing beverage programs, is going hand in hand with food. And so I've learned from really great chefs, and I think in kitchens it's always been like more of an inherent practice to use local ingredients. For us at in my spaces and the places I've consulted on, we've started thinking about locality and the reasoning behind them in more of like a carbon footprint sense. And so, and within that is not just like how many miles something has to travel in a refrigerated cargo truck, but also like how is the stewardship of the land being practiced or under practiced in the production of those ingredients. And so, you know, oftentimes it's not just about using this local seasonal product, but it's also about like who are the people behind it growing it, and what are they doing? Is that land been part of their family over generations? We prioritize using a lot of indigenous ingredients in my spaces. I think we'll talk about this a little later, but you know, we pour a lot of natural wines, and not just because it's the cool kid thing to do, but because that is like, you know, that's real land stewardship and preservation and sustainability in a bottle. And that's, I think, as like pure as it can get before it gets distilled and turned into liquor, and then go into a cocktail using seasonal ingredients and local ingredients. But yeah, I think, you know, everybody here has said, like, touched on different aspects that like really resonate with me. And you know, what in New York, and we were very lucky to be at the end of a lot of different supply chains. So it's not necessarily we have access to everything here, and we're very lucky in that way. And so we think a lot more about like, do we need a tomato that is hot housed, which takes up a lot of carbon footprint and produces a lot of carbon dioxide and all the things that are contributing to climate change. But we think we try to go a little bit further than that, because we have so much at our resource, and it feels important to use our platform to shed light on that.
Understood. Very important. I think this led you, if I'm not wrong, to launch last year a consulting and education company that focuses on these topics called Outlook Good. Is that right?
Yes, sort of. It's I used to have a company that did a lot more consulting on sustainability, and this Outlook Good is kind of the next evolution of that. I launched it in the middle of like our high quarantine period, and then had to reopen my restaurant. So it was taken off the back burner and put back on the back burner. But you know, I've been talking about sustainability for almost a decade now, and I think it's interesting that you know, I still am like, I often see lots of articles on sustainability, and I appreciate that I get interviewed for those things, but it just like, it kind of occurs to me frequently that there's so many other voices, like the people here on this panel, that are doing work. And so the goal of Outlook Good is to not just talk about sustainability, but highlight other people doing it, and how those intersect with a lot of the social injustices that we are having lifted up right now in the last decade or in the last year or so as a topic of conversation. We put out a book last year to highlight that. I'm in my boyfriend's restaurant right now. They're doing construction, so I apologize. We asked you know, a dozen or so bartenders from around the country to highlight a cocktail recipe using food waste. And the idea behind that was not just to talk about sustainability, but also kind of honor the supply chain, as we saw like so much of that it was broken down during COVID and continues to be. And so it's not just about onions spoiling in the fields, but it's also about all the labor that goes into getting them into grocery stores and getting them into people's grocery bags, and then, you know, the food waste that happens in people's homes, and what we in New York, we had piles of trash bags stacking up because our waste systems were kind of crumbling. And so the idea was just to touch and highlight all these different things that food waste touches and sustainability touches, and how we have the power, even in our home bars, even if you're not a cocktail bartender, to make something tasty and beautiful and weird and fun with all of those things. And I think that should always be the, you know, the lens that we look at sustainability with. Otherwise, it's really depressing, but.
Fair enough. Well, I think talking about food waste or working on waste would be a really nice moment to ask you, Matt, about which is the bar that you have in Sydney. It says that it's the world's first no waste bar. Can you explain to us what that means in practice for you?
In reality, being a zero waste bar is a future goal. But in our daily practice, RE is all about, we don't generate waste from something that's a fresh ingredient. We don't really generate waste for ourselves. We take waste from other places and we give it a new life within the bar. And that comes from two places. One is from people who are throwing things in the bin, but also the second part is the supply chain. And the supply chain is where we get most of our produce from. At the moment, we get all of the offcuts of chocolate from an ice cream shop, from them tempering chocolate. We get their strawberry tops. We get the wine lees from a winery. We get the spent grains from a brewery. So these are normal things that you get. But when we started to tap into food waste within the Sydney markets, we started working with our supplier, and they just saw it as the biggest headache ever. When they start work at midnight and finish at 8 in the morning, at 8 in the morning, they just want to go to bed. They don't want to talk to me about food waste. So we were in the market, so we spent quite a bit of time at like 4 a.m. talking to people, and the hustle bustle of a market is pretty insane. And when we started to tell the guys who have worked in the market for 30 years that we wanted to take the things they put in the bin, they actually, like, their faces lit up and they thought this is a really exciting project. And so then we started to ask them, like, what do you waste? And we got, the first meeting, we got offered 2 tons of cucumber. And then we got offered like 4 pallets of apricots, all in like within the space of half an hour. And then you start to realize the extremes of what food waste are. So then that's where we built our program around, is taking things that would normally go to landfill. And then that just grew from everything we do within the bar.
Nice. That's really amazing. I think logistically, that probably implies a very different supply chain than many traditional bars and restaurants are used to working with. How does that change the work for you guys day to day? Because I imagine you can't just call someone and be like, can you bring me the day old cucumber or the pallets of apricots?
The communication part is the biggest learning that we've had since we started. We basically, at the moment, we have a WhatsApp group with all of the people in the warehouse, the person in the market, all of my team, the owner of the business, and there's always an open line of communication. But if you don't communicate exactly what you need, the floodgates open. Like the first day that we took our first delivery was the biggest eye opener ever. We just got a message and some pictures saying, would you like to take this? And there was like a tray of mushrooms, a few strawberries, and some apricots. And we're like, yeah, we'll take it all. When we communicated, we'll take it all, they thought we meant we'll take it all from their warehouse. So we got the truck backed up, and the whole bar, the floor was full of food waste. And we were open to do development on the menu that day, and it took us a week to actually organize and work out what we were going to do with all the produce. And it put our opening back a week.
What do you do with all that produce?
We made about 75 liters of strawberry wine. And we've only just finished using it, and we've been open for 6 months. Yeah, we had rock melon on the menu. You just have to be creative and figure out what you're going to do. We made wines, we made vinegars, we made distillates. We tried to use the produce in 3 different ways and use it as a learning curve for us of like what are the 6 different ways you can use strawberry, or what are the 5 different ways you can use melon, and put it so we've got the information for the future for people who work in the team now, but will also come and work with us later on.
Awesome. And could you talk to us a little bit about how you also implemented no waste principles when designing the venue in terms of materials, glassware, etc.?
Yeah, just before, when we got the site, I met a guy called Nick Hoskins, and he has a directory online called the World's Most Rubbish Directory. And here it highlights bars around the world that use waste produce, but also materials, anything that you would probably want to find for a bar is probably listed on the directory. And he did a pop-up with Kettle One called the World's Most Rubbish Bar, and he built it within a container. So we got chatting and we started to discuss things, and then he started filming something for the Discovery Channel, and he went off the grid. So then we started chatting with my architects and designers, company called Alfred in Sydney, and I told them the vision for the bar, and we just, in that moment, we just decided let's interrogate everything. Like, let's really nail into everything that you touch and feel within a bar. And the bar is, you can see it's like really old behind me, but we're in an old locomotive workshop, which is heritage listed within Australia. So we're not actually allowed to touch the fabric of the building. We have to get permission to put a screw in the wall. So when we spoke to Heritage New South Wales, they were very interested in the fact that we were going to use recycled materials to bring to life an old building using obviously something that was old before. So they actually gave us free rein to how it would look. And now everything as a guest that you touch and feel within the bar comes from a recycled material. The bar top, the tabletops are made out of 82,000 milk bottles. The seats are made out of plastic wood composite. The lights are grown from mycelium. The seat levers comes from pineapple leaves. The art on the wall is charcoal print from the bushfires and the charcoal that happened all over Australia. Our glassware comes from our glassware supplier on the border of Mongolia and China. And it's, for every glass that she makes, 2 go in the bin. For every 3 that she makes, 2 go in the bin because they're imperfect. So we get all their imperfect glassware. Our plates are all the clay that's scraped off the floor from a ceramicist called Mud, and they make a recycled ceramic plates for us. Our uniforms are recycled cotton. We've just got some shorts actually on the way from the US at the moment that are made out of banana and pineapple skins for summer. And yeah, it's an ongoing conversation that there's always something new to find and try. And it will always be something that we look to implement, but we'll also be sharing all this data on our website.
Cool. Looking forward to reading more about it. Nick, could you talk to us a bit about your sustainability initiatives at True Laurel?
I really have to follow that up, or?
I know. I'm sorry. The banana skin shorts. It's really hard to follow that
so
up.
much
Do you want to talk about preservation techniques? Should we narrow it down to preservation techniques, which is something I'm really interested in?
No, I mean, honestly, like, I think our program is not necessarily like overly like progressive in its ways of it. It is attempting to be a sustainable bar, but we do in other ways sort of build things to last, and that goes from the design of this place to the cocktails that we make. So we have like we use almost everything that we get in house, but we're not accepting an insane amount of waste in, but we do use and focus in on what we're getting. And I have close relationships with a lot of the farmers that I work with. And again, working with smaller market gardeners, most of them are bringing their produce to the market and filtering it there because they're also the farmers and they get up really early and they bring it, they get their harvest and they bring it over. And so they put all their beautiful stuff on display typically because that's what sells. That's what people want when they're going to the farmers markets. That's why you think it's so beautiful. But most of the ones that I work with, I've built a relationship with, and actually see them in the back of their truck, kind of like going through the ins and odds and putting buckets of uglies together. And so I like to give them money for that. So we purposely work with a few of our producers and get there early and make sure we get buckets and buckets of their uglies that we can produce, because most of this produce we're processing day of anyways, and we're processing them into drinks. And so these things are being fermented, clarified, and coming out looking in a completely different format. So and also we want to stop things like oxidation, and we want to preserve them in these ways. So we're doing major batching here. We do, like when we, I just finished a prep shift with my prep lead, and we're prepping 3 to 4 days a week and putting together sometimes like 16 liters of a drink every 2 days. So it's kind of high volume preservation techniques, a lot of clarification, all these things. But yeah, we hone in on making sure that like we don't bring too much in. We're okay with 86ing something and going through it all. And when we're left with a little bit left over, we find neat little experiments on the side. But whether it be like letting the bartenders kind of make what we call like a trash smash, where they can just put on a drink for a lot cheaper on the menu. And we put in these little garbage cans that are cute and they're super Instagrammable. To just making things like it was just saying like we didn't make 76 liters of strawberry wine, but we do have 3 liters fermenting right now, and we'll probably just give those out as gifts sometime to our guests. So we make sure we use everything, but we're pretty dialed into what we're bringing in. Yeah,
makes sense. Sometimes the best anti-waste initiative is limiting quantities.
We also have a very small space, and our our refrigeration is very tiny, and we have a substantial food program, so we share with them, and yeah.
Totally. We focused a lot in this section, well, carbon footprint at the beginning, but we've talked a lot about food waste, but I thought maybe Maroš, you could tell us a little bit about your work with We Cycle Oslo or Himcock's work with We Cycle Oslo to reduce plastic waste specifically.
Yeah, perfect. We've launched a new menu this year. Basically, we come to the collaboration with the new no-profit organization. What was created is basically two of them. One is the Nordic Trash, and another one is the We Cycle. They collaborate together as well. Nordic Trash, basically the pickup trash around the sea and fjords, and they're using community workers to bring the bag into life through the make it and the furniture, tables, chairs, everything what is completely possible to make from the plastic, and they're selling to the store and reinvest the money back to the community and make more clear ocean, streets, and etc. etc. Another one is the We Cycle, is the base in Oslo. They're using also the plastic from the Oslo streets and some plastic from the ocean as well to bring back in the life as well. And we collaborate this year with bring the cover of our menu with the recycle plastic, basically with the Recycle company. It's super cool because every one piece looks like the beautiful, colorful piece of the art, because everyone plastic has different pattern and different color. And for me, it was very interesting. Everyone color has story behind. Example, yellow color on the menu is from the mustard. And the dark green is from the snooze, was basically tobacco pillows, what you're putting in Scandinavia under your lips, 6 or more, whatever. But they have like the green colors, and what you have the red colors from the butter containers. And that was very super interesting for me because they never did this project with the collaboration with the bars. They did some small project, but what we want to lift up, they are super focused to bring more responsibility to basically recycle the plastic, well, because they cannot recycle and use all the plastic because it's impossible, because they have to have the quotation, what can you use again and bring to the life. Some of plastic, unfortunately, is not able to recycle. But we're doing now with them also we collecting trash from our bar. And in the future, basically, we have already deal to make the coasters and everything possible. I know already the behind the bar in Norway was the agency to create the station. They're doing the cover of the bars with the recycle as well, plastic. Well, it's super nice to bring some things what we already use back in the life and use again. And it looks very cool. If you have time, just go to check the website and let them shout out.
I will definitely do that. Yeah, the aesthetics of sustainability, I think, could be a panel in and of itself. Be really interesting. Cool. Thank you so much, Maroš. Chris, next, we're going to pivot a little bit onto the next topic of low ABV and no alcohol. And I was thinking about, when I was reading about your work, I think sometimes we talk about sustainability in terms of materials and ingredients, but not necessarily in terms of what's sustainable for ourselves as people or our communities. And so I wanted to hear you talk a little bit about Sands Bar and why you wanted to open a bar space without alcohol.
Yeah, I love this conversation so far because it was reminding me of just how important it is to think about people when we think about sustainability. I have been really inspired by everyone who's shared, because it's about preserving and maintaining and celebrating what is good and what is natural about us. And that's exactly why I started Sands Bar. In 2017, I looked out across the landscape that is Austin and realized that there were just not a lot of options for people who did not want to drink or wanted to drink less. It was kind of like your bar, or stay at home and drink tea. There wasn't many options. And so I felt like in the spirit of equity, in the spirit of everyone having a place to go, we needed a space that felt nice, upscale, fun, and interesting, where we can get, like Claire said, that weird drink. And it may not include alcohol. And so that's where the idea of Sands Bar came. And we've been rocking and rolling here in Austin, having a good time, but really centering around connecting people. It's much more about what's around the glass than what's in the glass.
Very cool. And what experiences around the glass have you had that you think have been especially memorable in these past few years?
I think it's been really interesting to see people come into the space and connect in a way that you really can't do anywhere else. You know, most places you go, you're looking for, that don't serve alcohol, you're there to meet someone. If you go to a coffee shop, you're not there to meet a new person. You're usually there to meet a friend or a coworker. With Sands Bar, you're able to go into a space without alcohol and it feels so alive and vibrant that you're welcome to meet new people, to say hello like you would in any bar in the world. And I think that is really what makes Sands Bar a special place, is this ability to stretch out the night, right? When we're not drinking alcohol, we're able to have more fun, we can go longer, and people kind of go in and out of the bars down the row of bars that we're on. So they'll come to Sands Bar and have a alcohol-free drink, and they'll go to another bar and they'll come right back. It really helps to stretch out the night for them so that they can wake up tomorrow and feel refreshed.
Great. I know I was reading a little bit about how you've worked with brands and producers to create better zero proof options. Could you tell me a little bit about that work?
Well, now that work will include sustainability, I tell you that much. We're going to start thinking about this.
Cool.
What I love about this conversation is it's inspired me to think about what is possible. The zero proof and low alcohol category is still very, very early, still very, very new. And I think that if we build in, locality and sustainability into the blueprint right now, things can really go in a direction that is positive and that is good for this environment, right? And good for the people that consume it. But yeah, I've worked with brands to create beverages that are fun and interesting. I think an issue that a lot of people have when they look at alcohol-free beverages is that they're pretty dull and boring. It's soda, it's grenadine, it's very basic and not complicated. And in the last couple of years, I've really worked with spirit companies, especially, to make sure that they're offering products that feel interesting, complex, that have a desirability about them that makes people, whether you identify as a non-drinker or someone who does drink alcohol, you want to try it. And that's what's fun, is to get people who don't consider themselves alcohol-free to consume these products, to try them and to enjoy them.
Yeah, that's very interesting. It reminds me a bit of some of the plant-based food movement.
Yes.
Getting people who are accustomed to eating meat and may still be eating meat, try more plant-based options. Really cool. What tips would you give to bars and restaurants who still may be serving alcohol, who want to provide a better experience for sober patrons and staff? Because I think also sometimes we forget that sometimes the people we work with, some of them may not be drinking.
Yeah, I mean, so much of drink culture is alcohol centered. And I think that if you have a staff meeting with your bar staff, it may be important to have, an alcohol-free drink on, to offer them. I think that the most important thing that bars and restaurants can do is to listen to consumers. All across the world, people are asking for lower or no alcohol options, and we're asking for options that feel just as interesting. There's an acronym that I use everywhere, ENABs, equally attractive non-alcoholic beverages. And all that's saying is that no matter what you serve, it has to look just as good, right? Just as interesting. If it's got a garnish that's really beautiful in your cocktail, your non-alcoholic option should look the exact same way. And what I've learned is that people are willing to pay as much, if not more, for a beverage that had them in mind, that had the consumer in mind. So I just encourage everyone listening to be mindful of that these drinks should never be an afterthought. We're looking for drinks that include that sustainability piece, that have that environmentally friendly piece. That matters to us as consumers as well, and we're willing to pay top dollar to support visions like that.
Cool. Yeah, I think that's a really important point. Thank you so much, Chris. Really, really interesting. The next panelist was unable to be with us. It's Márcio Silva from Brazil. I'm just going to talk a little bit about his work for a minute with low ABV concept in Locali Cafe in Sao Paulo. So he was coming at it from a slightly different perspective, which is the idea of having a better daytime options and being able to kind of have this session drinking experience where you can kind of have this calmer, slower drinking experience. You can be out to lunch, you can be out during the day. And it's not necessarily this sort of nighttime strong drink. Pues we've all been in those bars, we all like those bars, but sometimes you want to be able to go out and have a drink and have a little bit calmer experience. Also in terms of food pairing, sometimes those lower ABV options are easier to pair with a food menu, as opposed to drinks like an old fashioned or a Manhattan, which can sometimes overpower the flavors on a plate. He also talked a bit about, at Locale, he's used a lot of wine to, one, lower cost, because here, well, in Brazil in particular, but I think here in South America in general, we had a lot of importation problems with the pandemic, and also many of the costs of the liquors that we're importing went through the roof. So he also decided to focus on wine-based cocktails as a way to, one, control costs, but also offer this better daytime experience for the consumers coming to this cafe that opens at 10 in the morning. So that's not necessarily the hour when you're gonna head straight to the martini or the old fashioned. He also thought about it, and I think Chris talked about this in a really beautiful way, in the creation of a community space. You know, I think the difference sometimes in the idea of people between a cafe and a bar is that maybe a bar is considered a little bit more of a party space, whereas a cafe can be considered maybe, well, I think bars are community spaces too, but a cafe can be considered an all-day community space where you can go and have your coffee and work, or you can go with your family, or you can go and hang out with your book and have a glass of wine. And I think he really thought that having lower proof options made it a better community space in the daytime, which I thought was a really great point. So that's a little bit about Locale Cafe in Sao Paulo. Hopefully we all get to go to Brazil and visit. Next, I'd like to talk a little bit, Kurt, you have a cocktail bar that has a section that is aperitivos, which I think is really interesting because it's incorporating a low ABV part of a program into your larger cocktail program. Could you talk to us a little bit about that? Oh, you're in mute.
Let me unmute it, thanks. Well, you know, there's a lot of progressive cocktail bars in Africa, from Lagos in Nigeria, Accra in West Africa, East Africa, Nairobi. So you have to understand the context, like Africa is the Wild West when it comes to the old Wild West when it comes to vermouth style drinks. When we brought the aperitivo in for lighter drinking and getting people to really set up people for an experience, our cocktail kitchen. You know, we're fortunate that people are still in love with theater style drinks here in Africa, especially because of bottle service and all the glitz that comes with it in bars and things like that. So our aperitivo started out explaining to people what it was, and this has run for a very long time. And instead of actually giving people we found that people enjoyed doing instead of bottomless canapes, actually doing bottomless spritz style drinks, and then paying for their canapes. And we actually had to teach them how to evolve that. So I think the aperitivo style is absolutely amazing in terms of getting someone who's coming to our place to experience. They want to go straight for the stronger drinks. And then what we do is we get them to have this really well-balanced drink that's not too sweet. And at the same time, in Africa, there's a massive sweet palate, and we want people to have more flavor and less sweetness in their drinks. So once you've taken out that sweetness, you're getting a lot of flavor. So we've spent a lot of time and effort educating people about aperitif, and I think it's very important people understand, you know, to start a drinks culture in your bar takes a lot of time. And when we started out with it, most people thought it wouldn't work. But now it absolutely works, and it's one of our draw cards. And I think that if with something that you really want to educate your guests with, you have to start somewhere and stick to your guns. Try and stick to your guns as long as possible while you're doing it.
Now I'm muted. Thank you. No, I think that last point was especially great advice for any bar, any type of bar. Claire, I wanted to talk to you next a bit about the low intervention wine bar you're opening called Buddy, which I think you're opening with Nick, if I'm not mistaken, in San Francisco. Could you or both of you tell us a bit about the concept and why you both decided to open a wine bar this time around?
I think that, well, I'll say that we are opening a wine bar. There's definitely a nice food component to it. And I think that we both have great aspirations to be an all-day space. I have Hunky Dory is an all-day space in New York, and prior to the pandemic, we were open 8 a.m. to 2 a.m. So we did 18 hours of service, and so all these things about no ABV and low ABV definitely like hit home, because we want to be able to offer, we want our space to be inclusive. And I think with this new space as well, Buddy, we want to interact with our community in a different way than you would just get at a regular cocktail bar. And so I mentioned that I think our love of natural wines is not just flavor preference, but also rooted in our commitment to sustainability in a bigger way. But we enjoy beverages and of all kinds, and I think that a lot of people, as other people have mentioned here, are looking to have their drinking and social experiences in a lighter way, a little bit more convivial way than a serious cocktail. I think it also, why have one stiff one when you can have many? And and I know that, like, as I get older, I tend to lean towards drinking more wine. But that's kind of my perspective. I was, all those things that we're going to be offering are things that I love and I love to share. For me, it was more about collaboration with other like-minded people. So I think I'll let Nicolas talk a little bit more about it.
I mean, I think you covered a fair amount, Claire. But yeah, Buddy's just a new concept from, there's 4 of us actually. Alvaro, Rojas, and Nora first. We're obviously not on this call, but are both in town right now, currently in San Francisco. So that's very exciting when these partners can actually get together and work on things face to face. But yeah, I think it originally started sort of from a low ABV love. Actually, Nora and I were doing a pop-up called Nick and Nora, and Nora at the time had a
great name
cocktail program, and I had, what's that? Oh yeah.
I've just always thought it was such a great name.
Yeah, it worked out. But we both had spirit programs and cocktail programs, and we wanted to do something that, like you said, works with food more. And I think we all kind of know that. Anyone who's been in the spirits world is that, typically when you're eating, you want to drink wine. And I'm really looking forward to Buddy actually being a restaurant and an all-day space, and having all different types of options, obviously, except for spirits, because it's a law thing here. It's the license we have. We can't serve spirits. But we're looking to create a nice, comfortable, safe space. And, Chris, some of the things you're saying, like I get really pumped on the no ABV program here at True Laurel, as limited as it is. Sometimes it expands just because we come up with new ideas, but something that gets me really excited about is that there's so much history to drinks that don't have alcohol as well. I mean, I think like there's like history is like, so like nostalgia is so like ingrained in like drinking culture, or this distillate has been made for hundreds of years and this, but it's like, yeah, but so is kombucha and like kefir practices and all these other different styles of just making drinks that don't get you hammered, from no alcohol to some. So it's really fun just doing all that research, and I think we'll have a nice little program over there at Buddy.
Awesome. Looking forward to visiting San Francisco when it's open. I want to go ahead and
Hi.
ask you guys before we have to shut down. Oh yeah, that's Percy. He wanted to come say hi. He's actually been very good today. I wanted to ask you all, what is one change you'd like to see in our industry, just to shut it down, because I think today what we've really been talking about are kind of different styles of changes in the way we think about bars and how bars operate. So I think I'll just go ahead and start with you, Nick, because you were the last one, and we'll go through everyone.
Sure. I mean, I just got back from Greece, and I went to this amazing bar called Santa Rosa when I was talking to the owner, Alekos. And really, what pulled me in was the feeling of the space and how hospitable. Like right off the bat, the service from everyone working there was just so hospitable. And he kind of, when we got into conversation, he was talking about how he felt like it's been something that's been lost on like creating the space that feels safe, the space that's designed before like the drinks and cocktail cultures were so like, these are the drinks we're making, this is the badass food we're making. And you know, it's the space that we're in, and it's the space where we're interacting with everybody. So it's like, we really need to respect that first. And the first thing to respect in that is the people that are working in it. So I think what a lot of us are starting to do is really like hone in and look at who we are and the people that we're working with and the respect we have for each other, and making sure that we're all comfortable first in this space, because that's going to transmit out to our guests. And, you know, I love when someone comes into this bar alone, like you were saying, Chris, like it doesn't always have to go, you're meeting someone, like when someone feels like they can pull up to True Laurel and chill by themselves, like it's like the best feeling in the world to me, that we've created the right thing.
Very true. Good point. Chris, for you, what is one change that you'd like to see?
One change I'd like to see is this idea that non-alcoholic or low ABV and regular bars and spirits are somehow separate. I think that I would like to see a full embracing of what we're doing on the low and no side, because I feel like in the spirit of inclusion, like we need to be thinking about these spaces as a space for everyone. I hope that when I fly across the world and visit all these spaces, I feel like there's a space for me and there's a drink for me, that I feel welcomed in that space. And so that's just something that I would like to see change, because I feel right now that no alcohol is kind of like the thing that we don't talk about, the one that we kind of don't want to really think about. And we're not prohibitionists. We believe that there's a space for spirits, there's a space for great wines and beers across the globe. We just want a space for us as well. We want a place where we can feel welcome and included.
Very well said. Thank you very much. Maroš, what's one change you would like to see in our industry?
Good question. It's a very good question. I think so. After Corona, more stuff, but it's okay. No, but really, I think so. Be more honest with each other, truly honesty, and this will be help us move forward, no in the back.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you very much. That's a really good point. Kurt, how about you? What's one change you would like to see? Oh, you're in mute again.
Self there. Well, I mean, a hot topic here in South Africa and in Africa as well is probably like life and career coaching for front of house hospitality staff and all hospitality staff. You know, there's a lot of glitz and glamour, and a lot of people have got the creativity, they've got the attitude and the motivation, but I still feel that if you go into a corporate environment, and most of us own bars that isn't in a corporate environment, you don't get bartenders don't get a lot of life coaching about financial management. It's an age-old story about lifestyle management and learning to focus on long-term goals, and I think that's something where we could really focus. And I mean, it goes back to staff well-being, mental health, emotional health as well. But I think if we really spent a lot of time on this, on career coaching inside small venues, for example, it would make a massive difference to bartenders in the long term.
Okay, thank you. An excellent point. How about you, Matt? What is one change you'd like to see?
I think it's bars and restaurants working together more closely and actually sharing information and knowledge. Like 10% of all the food produced in the world is not eaten, and that is, sorry, 10% of the world's greenhouse gases is food that's not eaten, and food waste is a massive problem, and we're, I think, being open to change as well. We're starting an initiative in Sydney called Never Wasted. I've enlisted 10 bars to work with me to create a circular economy of waste. And we were supposed to launch this in June, but we've been in lockdown since July. But when we come out of lockdown, we'll be working with 10 bars, and we're asking all those 10 bars to share their waste with each other, so they're not actually ever putting anything in the bin. And the idea is that we grow this into 50 bars in Sydney, and when we're happy with 50 bars in Sydney, we take it to Melbourne, Brisbane, and then we start taking it around the world. And so we have a 5-year plan to get bars around the world signing up to Never Wasted and putting drinks on their menu using another bar's waste. And it's quite a simple thing. There's a bar like literally over the road from you. You can partner with a bar over the road. You can divert from landfill and actually start looking after our environment. But I think we all have this idea of that we're going to do better things and we're all going to communicate and we're all going to work together. But when you go away, life gets in the way. And I think it's about coming together and actually creating change.
Definitely. Well, Never Wasted would also be a great no ABV, no waste collaboration.
100%.
Just want to throw it up there.
We were going to call it Let's Get Wasted, but we thought it was the wrong connotation, so we're stuck on Never Wasted instead.
Claire, what's one change you'd like to see in our industry?
I think that's something that a lot of people awoke to in the last year or so, at least in the United States, is how underrepresented our industry is, and when it comes to politics and policy. And so I'd like for more people to use their space, use their standing in the community, and realize that they have the power to have a say in the future of our communities, not just our bars, but you know, things that come down from whatever Capitol Hill, but also how the success of our communities in general. I think that, you know, who represents us and how we are represented is really matters. It matters to the success of all of us. And the only way for us to have that representation show up is if we as community members, as bar owners, as bartenders, show up and hold those people accountable. And so I want people to, you know, whether that's writing to your senator about the issues that matter to you, or, you know, starting on a grassroots level and seeing who in your community is active and joining your voice with theirs, like all those things really matter. And we all want to make space to do more sustainable things, to do fermentation and, you know, to focus more on low ABV cocktails, but it's hard to make space when in our industry, our resources are so spread thin, and we have to find ways to create more access to resources. And that unfortunately comes down to what can be seen as like really mundane politics, but it really matters. And so I just want everybody to feel like their voice does matter, and you can show up and people will listen to you.
I also just would like to remind all of us who vote in the US, myself included, that those policies don't only affect you guys at home, but us overseas. So please vote. A big thank you to our esteemed panelists for generously offering us both their wisdom and their time. And thanks to everyone for watching. The Spirited Awards ceremony will be on the 23rd of September at 4 p.m. Central Standard Time. I really enjoyed hearing from everyone today. Thank you for letting me be a part of this roundtable, and I hope to see you all soon in your bars or mine.